down, however, it'd be disastrous. With a 14-foot tide, the water would literally disappear from under Crusader, leaving us stuck in the mud. Flipping to the pages for Sunday, August 19th, I read, High tide, 0500. Low tide, 0950. I read it several times. Really? If this was right, we had gone aground at peak high tide, the worst possible time. There wouldn't be enough water in Cullinan Bay to refloat Crusader for another 9 or 10 hours, and the whole time we'd be settling more deeply into the mud. In the worst case, we'd be sunk too deeply to get out at all. The crew and I woke everyone and shuttled them in small boatloads to a tarped shelter on shore. Richard stood by with a rifle in case of bears. The wind was gusting at more than 40 knots, pouring off the mountains and whipping the bay into frothy streams. It ripped one of our kayaks from Crusader's deck and flipped it like a toothpick across the bay. Driving rain stung my eyes. The nearest help, in Sitka, was at least 4 hours away by boat. As a general rule, a captain doesn't call for assistance unless it's direly needed, but I wouldn't know if we needed help until the tide was rising, and by then it might be too late for any help to make a difference. Over the hours, I watched Crusader drop like a fatally wounded animal, first to her knees, then all fours, and finally onto her side. She filled chest high with water. When the tide reversed, all 70 tons of her were stuck in the mud and didn't want to come back up. Crew member Leela Hilton and I stayed on the boat, trying to rescue valuables, swimming in the flooded cabins. I worried about the engine, a tractor-sized Detroit diesel. Maneuvering in tight anchorages or marinas would be impossible without it. I watched the rising water lick at the oil pan, then swallow it. The batteries were next, then the fuel injectors. By mid-morning, the engine's whole iron mass had vanished under the turbid water. Food, shoes, and fruit seemed to delight in their newfound buoyancy. Packages of raisins and mint cookies bobbed here and there. Herring balls of rice swirled above the quarter berths. And the books, 200 or more, swelled with ocean, took up dancing partners with the apples and pears and tennis shoes. I'll never forget the titles that floated by. Ed Rickett's Between Pacific Tides, Robert Bly's When Sleepers Awake, Ram Dass's How Can I Help? Leela managed to smile as she held up a soaked copy of Maxine Cuman's In Deep. Finally, I realized the boat was at risk of becoming a total loss, and I called for help. The Coast Guard sent a helicopter with 3 large pumps. The pilot radioed that they'd like to stay and help, but 2 other boats were in trouble up the coast. They left gas for the pumps, which we started immediately, placing 1 in the forward cabin and 2 in the engine room. Even with the pumps gushing 350 gallons a minute, the effort seemed futile. There was no sign of gain. Sometime in the late morning, I paused on the top rung of the engine room ladder, feeling the terrific cold for the first time. I was exhausted. We all were. The group on land was rescued mid-morning by a local fisherman who had heard my radio call for help. I was glad to know they were safely on their way back to Sitka. Leela and I stayed behind, just the 2 of us, having gotten all the help we could expect. It was time to let Crusader go. I wondered what the insurance company would need. What should I take with me as I left her for the last time? Then something shifted. Leela and I watched transfixed as the cap rail and bulwarks reappeared. Long blades of eelgrass disentangled from the deck and slipped back into Cullinan Bay. Released from the muddy bottom, Crusader was floating upright in 90 seconds. Leela kept the pumps working while I drained 7 gallons of seawater from the engine's main oil chamber and 3 more from the gearbox. Leela helped me pull the valve covers and